all lies will be exposed.
As they should all the time, every time. And we got ourselves an awesome Tuesday morning show, live 9 a.m. But today, this is going to be a power panel show because we're going to be talking about suppression, politicians being hypocritical, who knew? And what better way to start this conversation off than was two individuals that have been the front and center of talking about everything that's happening live right now in this country. Give it up for first good friend of the show and someone who has been knocking it out. Give it up for Keaton Weiss of Dissidence.
Hey, man, good to see you again.
Yeah, good to have you on. We got a lot to talk about. We got some beefs to address with the governor of the great state of California.
That's right. We're doing post-duopoly this week, right? Are we doing post-duopoly tomorrow?
I believe so.
I think so. Yeah.
We'll have to find out about that. And then also, someone who hasn't been on the show for a while, but we're glad to have him back on. He has been in the trenches longer than me and Keaton. Unredacted tonight. It's every Thursday on YouTube and Rumble. Give it up for the man, the myth, the legend, Lee Camp Lee. How you doing, my friend?
Hey, thanks for having me on, Kit. Good to see you, Keaton.
Good to see you too, man. It's good to meet you. So until this morning, you and Nico House were the only two guys who, like, the only two peers of mine in this space who, like, I know them and they know me, but I never met. So now Nico is last on the list. It's great to meet you.
We finally did it. Yeah.
You know what? You know what? Now I'm going to get a text message from Nico House because him and I do talk a lot. He's going to say, "Kid, because you didn't invite me on." Like I'm going to get a lot of blowback now because of that. Now I realize that.
Then I'll have met everybody. Then I'll pretty much. I don't want to insult anybody by forgetting them, but I'm pretty sure that's everybody.
No, sadly, it's a small world.
Yeah, it is a small world. That's the thing. Yeah.
It's a small world in which all of us have dealt firsthand with censorship on one form and another. I mean, Lee, you've gone through it, and Keaton, I think it's important for us to clarify something that happened on Sunday, because this hit your channel. I just want to pull this up here because I think it's important that we get this clear because it wasn't a YouTube issue. So I'm going to have you lead on this, but here's a tweet that you guys posted. This from the Dissidence account on X. Hey, for some reason, X is still up and running. At Gavin Newsom, who's the sitting governor of the great state of California. You're a sitting governor. Why is your new podcast copyright protected by iHeartMedia? This isn't very statesmanlike, but then again, neither was letting your biggest city burn to the ground. And this is from a message from YouTube. This is not YouTube. This is more of what Gavin Newsom's content is. Hi, Dissidence. Copyright content has been detected in your video. Newsom grovels to Charlie Kirk. Shapiro pushes Chauvin pardon. Trump defunds Columbia with Blakely. And she was a great guest on your show. Nice. As a result, your video has been blocked and can no longer be played on the YouTube. This is not a copyright strike and does not affect your channel. So, Keaton, take us from the beginning. What went down? What happened? And how was this eventually squared away?
So we wanted to cover Newsom's interview with Charlie Kirk. We thought it was newsworthy because in that interview, like the headline says, he basically grovels to him the whole time, which, Russell noticed the pattern, which was very smart, I think, which is that, coming out of 8 years of Reagan and 4 years of Bush the first, Bill Clinton was able to win by basically presenting himself as, a Reaganite with Democratic sensibilities. And then much in the same way, Obama was really a continuation of Bush, but with more liberal sensibilities. And you can see now Newsom trying to, I think, extinguish, no pun intended, the fires from people's memories and position himself for a presidential run, is going to try to present himself as basically Trump with liberal sensibilities, right? And that's why I think he's really starting off this podcast run where he said, I'm going to run through the CPAC list and basically try and triangulate just the way that Bill did in the 90s. So we thought that was newsworthy. So we played, quite a bit of it, maybe 5-6 minutes worth of like an hour-long podcast. Now, we do our due diligence a lot on the show. If there's anything questionable, if a video has music in it or whatever, anything that could flag the copyright trigger, we will run it through our personal channel. We'll upload it to our personal channel to see if it gets flagged for copyright. And if it does, we either won't use it or we'll use the audio from it and not the video. In this case, it never occurred to us that the sitting governor of the biggest state of the country would copyright block his podcast while he's in office. That just never even occurred. Like, because of the YouTube rules being what they are, the policies being what they are, yeah, you could do it, but wouldn't that look bad? It never occurred to us, oh, these are the Democrats. They have no shame whatsoever. And that is a very Democrat thing to do, is put out this podcast and then copyright block it to basically prevent commentators like us from doing what we do for a living, which is play a video and comment on it.
Dunked on by everyone.
Yeah, right. Exactly. You stop people from dunking on you. And look, we all know there are certain shows and media outlets that do this, like the Stephen Colbert show is great material for parody and doing the kind of dunks and takes that we do, but you can't do it because they will copyright block that. But it just never occurred to us that a sitting governor would engage in that. Like I said, it's not very statesmanlike. Like, I mean, the sitting governor of a state, if you're an active politician currently in office, your materials should be public domain. Like, if after you leave office you want to cash in on a podcast, like whatever, I mean, I still think it's really bad form for a politician, a public servant, to do things in that way. But this is not, I mean, he is the current governor, and his words should be free to comment on. Now, this, of course, is setting aside all of the obvious bullshit with the YouTube policies, whereas just playing something is not copyright infringement. There's fair use considerations, which I understand. Look, they're a huge company. They can't have a person on the beat to discern that every time. So their policy is shoot first, ask questions later. Block the content and then let them appeal it, right?
Yeah,
which is bullshit, but we understand that. Like, that I understand. I wasn't surprised by that. What I was surprised by was that the sitting governor of a state would actually copyright block their content. Sorry, Lee.
But it's kind of amazing that YouTube has become more censored in many ways than television. I mean,
yeah.
Like, if I had a TV comedy show, I can show clips from whatever and make fun of it, and I'm not going to get in trouble for that.
Yeah. Yep. Exactly.
Maybe Lee, if you could elaborate a little bit more, because here's the thing. We've all dealt with some form of. And again, what happened to do Dissidence this time around was Gavin Newsom's podcast. But if we were to look at YouTube as a whole and other social media platforms, there is that real risk of what we do here being censored. I mean, Hardlands Media's gone through the gauntlet. Lee, you've gone through that gauntlet.
Oh, yeah.
And then, of course, do Dissidence. Keaton, I mean, I remember when you guys got hit, and I was more than happy to help you guys out. And in turn, you guys, we're all trying to at least help each other out, stay afloat in this wave of changes that are happening, to where who knows what the guidelines are anymore, because YouTube, Google are laying off people. Of course, that's happening. You have AI, and you have to wonder if the person you're speaking to, especially when it comes time to square something away like this, are you speaking to a human? And I could look somebody in the eye and say, I don't know if I spoke to a human being or not. So, Lee, I know I didn't mean to cut you off there, but I think you were going to add in something. So I'd like to hear your commentary.
Oh, no, I will not assume that everyone knows my story. I'd love to be so famous that everyone does, but no. Yeah, I had a TV show called Redacted Tonight for 8 years, and then it was essentially the channel, the whole channel, RT America, was shut down by U.S. sanctions. And immediately that same week, YouTube banned my entire YouTube channel, Redacted Tonight, around the world. So to this day, if you go to it, it says banned in your country, but that's every country. And it's a digital book burning, because essentially everything, thousands of videos are basically erased. And then that same week, my Spotify podcast, which was not part of RT America, was also banned.
Wow, I didn't know that. On Spotify?
Yeah.
Wow.
So I ultimately put it up under a new name, but of course you lose all the subscribers and everything. So now it's called The Lee Camp Show on Spotify. But and more recently, of course, there's the issues with TikTok. I was only on TikTok for about 2 months, about a year ago. And in that 2 months, I got banned and had no reason or right to appeal. There was no appeal button. There was nothing. Just, you're done. And this is not for posting neo-Nazi shit. This is for being, anti-war, anti-imperial. That gets you banned around the world. I've tried to recreate, what I had, and just recently I brought back Redacted Tonight, or a new version of it called Unredacted Tonight. That's on a new YouTube channel, but it is amazing that they can just, you can spend 10 years building something. I spent probably 12 or 14 years building up my Facebook, and it still exists, but it's shadow banned. So 330,000 subscribers or followers means nothing if they're not going to show it to people. It's a meaningless number. And so it's like you can spend years building this stuff up, and it'd be like if you built a restaurant for 10 years and then the city built a wall in front of the front door and they said, well, it's the sidewalk. We can build what we want. It's like, well, yeah, it might still sit there, but no one can get into it.
Well, yeah, and I mean, look, I mean that is a harrowing story. I know you used to call yourself the most censored comic in the U.S., and yeah, that is wild. But what you said earlier is true. Where like, yeah, these tech platforms are more censored than TV, and I think what Kit you said too was a big part of that. With TV, you have very often bad people, but you at least have people overseeing the content. In these tech mediums, you have AI overseeing the content to the point where, like, we're covering today at 2:00 the Mahmoud Khalil abduction and the protests and stuff like that. And we're playing a lot of clips on TV where they're talking about he's a Hamas supporter, this, that, and they keep saying those buzzwords over and over and over again. You don't know that if you just play those words over and over and over again on YouTube, it's not going to get flagged as some sort of, hate speech or whatever, even though it's not. Now, if you were dealing with a person overseeing that, you'd have no problem, but we're not. And this is the huge problem. And look, before I got lucky enough to the point where, like, people started enjoying my online content, I supported myself as a gig worker. I drove for Uber, I drove for DoorDash, Grubhub, Instacart. Same work environment there. You're working for Skynet. You're working for AI. You're working for robots. They can deactivate you at any moment. It's not even called a firing because you're a contractor. They can deactivate you just like here. They can deplatform you. This is why I think a lot of people are blindsided by Doge. A lot of people were like, wait a minute. So they could just lock you out of your work portal. And then when you try to log in, it says you can't because you're fired. Like, it didn't occur to people that workplaces could function in that way. But because of my background, both in terms of this and my prior, work as a gig worker, I've been working for robots for over 10 years now. You know what I mean? I haven't had a human boss in 10 years. I work for robots, which in a sense, it's liberating because you don't have a person to answer to. But but the double-edged sword of that on the flip side, it's a lot scarier. It's a lot harder because when something goes wrong, there's no human element to the decision whether to give you a second chance or to clarify whether you should have been penalized in the first place. Right. And this is making a mistake about it, how Elon Musk and this whole crew, they want to run the entire economy this way. They want to make everybody gig workers. Sorry,
Lee, go ahead, and then I got a question to bring up to you two guys. Because
all I said was the question is whether the bots are less likely to sexually harass you.
Yeah, yeah, right, exactly. Yes.
Well, here's the thing. You guys have probably already seen this. And, when we look at the environment on social media, we've seen how corporate media, especially in 2015, got really jealous of YouTubers and content creators, becoming more popular than them. And then, of course, there was the first great adpocalypse, the great start of it all. And now, after November 5th of 2024, we saw something, and that is corporate media bleeding out and dying. I mean, their system that they had just isn't effective anymore. And in turn, we've noticed, or I think we've all noticed, including our viewing audience members have noticed, the rise of people from corporate media going onto YouTube and doing a YouTube channel as well and being independent. And now these same jagoff politicians doing the same thing too, coming into our backyard. But yet they have that extra special protection. So with people like Gavin Newsom doing a podcast or trying to seem hip and cool and relevant to this modern day and age of voters that are permanently online, is this a way to push out independent media? Because look, commentary on Gavin Newsom is newsworthy event. And what you guys, I remember watching your show on that Sunday, Keaton, and I thought, hey, this is a great analysis. This is great commentary. You guys were breaking down Gavin Newsom, but then as soon as your live stream was over or getting close to it, this happens. You get this message, and now there seems to be an uneven playing ground. Is this a way to push us out? Gentlemen, I want to get your thoughts.
I mean, I do think the market's getting flooded by these by these people who are part of the establishment. I've always been amazed that people want to listen to the establishment voices on like podcasts and YouTube. Because
Right.
isn't that why you turn to podcasts and YouTube, is to get away from this garbage, this pre-planned corporate trash? But it definitely, and fame is fame, and a name is a name, and people are just more likely to. And of course, it all comes down to the algorithm. What's going to be pushed on people? It's like if Gavin Newsom's thing pops up on their screen when they open their phone, it's going to get listens. Like, that's just how this system works. And of course, mine is never going to be pushed on people. In fact, one of the earliest like kind of quasi shadow banning things they did to my stuff and Redacted Tonight is you get to the end of a video on YouTube, it's always going to push you to a different video unrelated to mine. It is going to try and it's kind of like, oh, you poor little fella, you ventured into a part of the web you weren't supposed to go. So here's a Daily Show, they or Rachel Maddow. They always try, and it's a gentle push, it's just move it along.
Let me ask you guys this. Yeah, since we've all been on YouTube, you check out the numbers on the YouTube studio. I had a friend of the show named Michael Vass. He's conservative leaning, and he sent me a screenshot of YouTube telling him, "Oh, hey, here's some content that your viewing audience might like," and it's all from Occupy Democrats or from MSNBC. You guys know what I'm addressing about. It's looking in the background of what YouTube is suggesting. And I looked at it and I said, holy crap, these are the same videos that YouTube's telling me that my audience would like. So if I did, hey guys, Trump is going to go behind bars within the next 12 days. No one in my audience is interested in that because they heard that for the last 8 years, how Donald Trump's going to go to jail. Guess what? He's in the White House. That's not going to happen. And yet that's being pushed all the time. It's maddening that this is what's being suggested. And then what happened to your channel, Keaton, was Gavin Newsom by iHeartMedia. He is a public figure. He is open for scrutiny. He is open to be commented on unless he's got that extra special deal with iHeartMedia. Your thoughts?
Yeah, well, like I said, the YouTube policy is frustrating, but it's a price of doing business by now. It wasn't surprising. And so my issue here is not so much with YouTube. It's not that the policy is good, but it is what it is at this point. I was more surprised that he would decide to copyright block that because you have the option as a channel. Like, you can copyright block your content. You could sign up for their content ID thing and decide what happens to another channel when they play your stuff. And like, almost no one in no one in our space in the podcast game does that. That's a very TV thing to do. Like the Colbert Show does that. Saturday Night Live does that, right? Where it's just you play a clip of the Dave Chappelle monologue on SNL and it's blocked, right? And this is kind of the world that Newsom comes from. So maybe he figures that that's cool to do, but it's not. When you're a podcaster, when you're in this space, part of being in this space is other people get to comment on your work, right? Exactly. I mean, that's kind of the whole game. And so, yeah, it was surprising that he did that. And I wanted to go harder at him in the tweet. I didn't want to use the fires. I wanted to say this isn't very statesmanlike, but neither was fucking your campaign manager's wife in 2007, which you admitted to. But Russell thought that was too obscure a reference. He didn't think that enough people would get that, which he's probably right. The fire is fresher in people's minds.
Exactly. Is there water in the reserves? Yeah. The thing is, Gavin, or any other politician, you are in the sphere of social media. I mean, everything is open for content. Plus, Keaton, hey, that was free promo. That was free promo of Gavin Newsom's freaking podcast in which you saw him groveling to Charlie Kirk, which says a lot about Gavin Newsom if he's going to be this big alpha dog to try and stop or stand up against Donald Trump. And we're seeing all the Democrats flail around like little punk children. So that's a thing. Go ahead.
Well, there's the other thing. Like his appeal. I mean, it's been said before. This isn't my original thought, but I think it's right that part of doing this podcast is to really appeal to men. Men are overly represented in the podcast audience space, and his guest lineup, is really meant to really sort of bridge the gap between Democrats and a lot of men who have felt alienated by Democrats. And I could just tell you, I meant it as a joke, but that history that he has of having an affair with one of his best friend's wives. Yeah, that's not a way to the heart of a man. Men don't like that. Men,
no,
men do not like that. Men do not like men who fuck their friends' wives. That's like a sin against manhood. You don't fuck your best friend's wife. That's like rule number 1 of being a man. So his history is not going to lend itself to that. I think he's damaged goods. I think he has some political talent, not much, but some. But I
You're being
think
too
between the
generous there.
fires, and well, no, look, he has some charm. I mean, don't forget he was married to that Kimberly Guilfoyle
Oh,
woman.
that's
Like,
insane.
yeah, he has a way of charming people who would be inclined to hate his guts. So he's not talentless, but I think he has too much baggage at this point, and I think the fires were the nail in the coffin.
Of course it would. Lee, you wanted to add in something?
Well, I don't. Are we in a time where who you bang seems to matter anymore? I mean, Trump's banged everything that moves, so it's
That's true. But did he cross
I don't
that
know that
line?
it
I mean,
has
does Trump
the
have
impact it used
friends?
to.
I don't think Trump has friends. Really, he doesn't seem to
Yeah.
have
No.
anyone who
No.
He
he's
has
close enough to-
associates. He has
Yeah,
associates.
yeah, like he has associates. Like to Trump, the world is fair game. Like your best friend, I don't know if the campaign manager was his best friend, but he described him as a good friend. Yeah, you don't do that to a good friend. That is if there is a code of manhood, that is a gross violation of that.
Clinton definitely stuck to that. Bill Clinton.
Yeah,
Exactly.
The code of manhood.
But what I am concerned about, though, especially now, look, under the 4 years of the Biden-Harris administration, Hardlens Media, we went through like the trenches of a lot of censorship. I mean, when we first started way back in 2017, with myself and Daniel, it wasn't as bad as it was under those 4 years. And now that during that entire gauntlet, I mean, we went through so much crap. Of one video that got deleted was when we said that Jimmy Dore was right in calling out the squad, and nothing in there was said that was offensive. And that video was deleted. Nobody cared, but our channel was remonetized. Fine. Then YouTube hits us with giving out false information. But we were talking about how CNN was smearing Joe Rogan. And then in another video, we were talking about people like Julian Assange or with the pandemic. And there was another time with what happened on January 6th. And it's like there's no real oversight. And you mentioned YouTube shooting first and asking questions later. It's going to be to the point where they're just going to shoot and forget asking questions. That's a dead body and move on. It's going to be like something from Deadwood or Tombstone, where somebody just comes up to you, shoots you in the head. The content creator is gone and everyone moves on. And yet the subscribers are wondering what happened. And so what are your thoughts overall with not only with Gavin Newsom, but with this administration, now the Trump administration, and the future of free speech on YouTube or on X or on any of these other platforms? Because I feel like we got this guillotine blade over all of our heads. Lee, you were going to add in something. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say that there's some people who have this hope that because Trump's in office, all of a sudden everything's going to open up again, and it's going to be like it was in 2012 or something when things were more free on the internet. By bullshit. Like a strongman authoritarian doesn't get into office and then give back the controls, the levers of power over these things. There may be some slight shift in what gets most shadow banned and things like that, but I don't think it's going to change much. Facebook, even though Zuckerberg's gone through his brand laundering bullshit and now is a MAGA bro, I've seen no difference in the shadow banning of my large Facebook page. It stays exactly the same. Mm-hmm. And I think the stuff you're talking about where they give it a strike or they say it's, get a limited audience and then you ask for a review and then they ultimately stay, 5 or 10 days later, they go, oh, okay, it is okay. It turns out we reviewed it and it looks fine. Well, that kind of serves a purpose. It makes sure that the content they didn't really want out there has already been limited. Even if the thing gets overturned, you've lost that 5 days, which is the only time they were going to show it to anybody anyway. So it serves a purpose even when they go, oh, whoops, sorry, you got it right.
Exactly.
And I don't think any of this is. I would be shocked if much of this suppression changes because Trump's in office.
Yeah, I agree. And yeah, to your point about that, some people tweeted at us, well, you should appeal it. The block of the video. I'm like, by the time they decide on the appeal, it's old news. Nobody's going to watch it anyway. Like, news business is fast. Yeah, no, but I agree. I mean, this crew cares nothing about civil liberties. They have no respect for the right to dissent. Look what they're doing to Mahmoud Khalil. I mean, this is step one. We're doing a couple of fairly extended segments on this afternoon, so I'm going to feature this Max Blumenthal tweet, which I'll read right now. He says, the mission creep won't stop at revoking green cards of Palestine solidarity protest leaders. The Zionist movement, which paid for Trump's unconstitutional policy, seeks to criminalize all actions that interfere with its supremacist goals. No one knows where the occupation ends. Yeah, that's absolutely true. This is the easiest target in their minds, even though he is a legal permanent resident. No, these people care absolutely nothing about free speech. They never did. That was very obvious, plainly obvious since October 8th of 2023. Fairly obvious up until then. I mean, they don't really respect people's right to criticize them. They respect your right to criticize the government with an asterisk, depending on who's in the government. But no, they have no principles whatsoever, and there's nothing they won't do. There's no place they won't go. Like, the Democrats will enable this kind of fascism and Nazism, but they can't fully embrace it in the same way Trump can because it's off-brand, because the sensibility of the Democratic base, is such that they have, superficial, they very superficially value things like tolerance and inclusivity and liberty. These are
They don't
overt.
believe that.
These are overt fascists. I mean, these are just absolute overt fascists who just signal, no, if
the mask
you're
is off.
here, right, if you're here and you don't like the country, you have to leave. Like, that's it. And
Or you don't like
likes
genocide.
that. Right, or you don't like genocide. And their base likes that. So they feel no need to rein any of this in. And I do think this Mahmoud Khalil case is step one of many. So no, I think it's going to get much, much worse. I mean, this last month and a half has felt like a year, but it's only been a month and a half. These guys still got their whole term left. We're only getting started. Wait till the war drums with Iran start beating. Imagine what this crew will do with Patriot Act powers while they're ginning up a Middle East war. We saw what George Bush did in 2003, which was horrible. Imagine what these fucking people are going to do with the same powers and a war that they have to gin up, which it looks like they're trying to.
And for all intents and purposes, when you mentioned George W. Bush, the powers that are kind of taken by the executive branch are not like given back once Obama got into office.
No.
It just keeps ramping up.
Yes.
So it's like the Democrats can talk about, oh, we would never do the things George W. Bush does. And then Obama gets into office and it all stays essentially identical. I mean, some of it got worse if you look at like the surge in Afghanistan, but it's like they can flail and say how horrible things are, and then the moment they're in office or they have the power, they don't undo the things that the executive branch powers that were taken.
No, of course
Right.
not. Of course not. And that's what makes it a very dangerous situation, because no party has permanent power. The pendulum always swings. And so, this crew with these powers,
the two parties that are this far apart.
right? Yeah.
Keaton, actually, Lee, it's a little bit closer
All right,
because just say, actually, just
Little.
fuse your fingers together like Brundlefly. 'Cause then and only then it does it actually make sense, because the problem is that both parties work together, and the crisis for all of us is that there's nowhere for real free speech advocates, those on the left and on the right, to really go for, because now you already have, and we're going to be talking about this later on the show, where you have Donald Trump calling for the removal, or he's at the primary of one Representative Thomas Massie. And I've been seeing the spears and shields come out on both sides, one side taking Thomas Massie's side, the other side taking Donald Trump's side. And it's just fascinating to see just where this will go and what this means further in this discourse of the second Trump administration, and whether or not we can still be able to speak out. Because I've been hearing from the most diehard Trump supporters that there's going to be more free speech. And on the one hand, I hope that's a wonderful scenario. I would love that. But then if we just rewind back the clocks, just a few weeks ago, weren't some X accounts losing their blue check marks? Do we remember that?
I don't know what's going on with X. I mean, I'm still on it, but I don't know what's going on.
Go ahead, Keaton.
with Massie, we're going to cover this on the show later too. What's interesting is that you have a lot of people who love Massie. A lot of MAGA really loves Massie, and a lot of like the MAGA adjacent people who never quite, went full in to the MAGA movement, but they supported kind of Trump, and tried to kind of twist themselves in knots and sort of convince their audience that basically Trump and Massie were on the same page. Because look, Massie is, I think, a man of principle. Not all of his principles are my principles, but a good many of them are. He seems to be a genuinely pro-free speech guy. He has criticized the influence of Israel in our politics. I don't think he's great on the issue overall, but he's a lot closer to where I am than just about anybody else in Washington, Democrat or Republican. But now they're in a bind because now Trump comes after him for opposing this budget, and now they have to pick a side. And yeah, that is a difficult place to be when you've tried to sell people on this idea that no, actually Trump and Massie are basically the same breed. They're not the same breed. Massie is a principled, libertarian-oriented conservative. Trump is an authoritarian. And so that contradiction has become really an inescapable topic of conversation now. It'd be very interesting to see how this plays out over the next few days, because a lot of people who are not generally, orthodox conservatives like Massie a great deal, and I think they were kind of engaging in some hopium to get themselves to believe that Trump and Massie were kind of on the same side, but they're not, obviously. Kit, I got to prep my show. I got a lot of work to do. So I know I had it out at 10:30. So I got to sign off for now. But
real quick though, again, Keaton, but all in all, just to calm people down and just make sure that your channel is still good to go.
Our channel's fine. We don't need anybody to harass YouTube for us. Yeah, none of that. This is more about Gavin Newsom copyright blocking content that should be public domain because he's a sitting and active politician. Yeah.
All right.
So,
awesome.
you can tweet at Gavin Newsom, but, you can leave YouTube out of it for now.
All right. Done deal. So, first of all, again, thank you, Keaton, for taking time out of your day for joining us. But Lee, if you got a few more minutes, I would love to just pick your brain overall. What's the future of free speech while you still have time? Because I think you got to show.
I got a few minutes. Nice to meet you, Keaton.
Nice to meet you too, Lee. Good to see you, Kit.
Take care. All the best. Thank you.
You got it, guys.
All right. So let's remove him. So there you go. All right. So Lee, I think what is the overall big takeaway from everything that we've been discussing? Because you have been, I remember watching you even before Hardlands Media came into existence, and we started in 2017. Your overall feeling of this environment for free speech and what we do in regards to giving commentary and news. I mean, there seems to be a little bit of uncertainty, and I'm getting this pit in my stomach that I've never had before, where it's like, is this the end, or are we going to get a knock at the door from the political police and say, FBI, open up, and then, hey, what happened to Kit? What happened to Lee? What happened to Keaton? What happened to Jimmy? What happened to everybody that's been free speech? I mean, that is the concern that I'm having right now with this administration. And maybe I'm overreacting, overthinking. Fine, I can accept that, but it is a very real thing, because I've nearly lost my channel more than once, and thankfully people like you and others have helped us out. And when it ever happened to anybody else, we've been there. But there's going to be a point of where time is up.
Luckily, I've had that pit in my stomach since I think 2016, so it's almost formed into a diamond now, which is pretty cool. But it's to me, this is kind of par for the course. I haven't heard many people talk about this, that there was kind of a golden age of internet freedom that started in like probably 2008, because we had to get to the point that people could get video easily on their phones, which took a few years. So you talk 2008, somewhere in there, and it went through to 2016. It was probably about 8 or 9 years, and during that time, the ruling elite, the oligarchs, got very scared, because you saw things like the initial rise of Bernie Sanders nearly winning 2016 without there hadn't been all the rigging. You saw Occupy burst, which became the first global protest movement that wasn't just one day. You saw Black Lives Matter. You saw even the beginnings, the early days of the Me Too movement, when it mattered more. There's all those things burst forth in that time. The ruling elite, the corporatists at the top became very nervous of this freedom of speech. But it wasn't just freedom of speech; it was freedom of speech and freedom to have that speech brought into the homes of every American in a way that it had never happened before. And
Right.
we saw all of these people-powered movements, whether you agreed with every one of them or not, and that made them very nervous. And we have now seen the crackdown, the response, and there's many different tiers to it, but it involved shadow banning, it involved straight up banning, deplatforming, it involved flooding the market with garbage and bots, flooding the market with just vast misinformation so that people kind of don't know what's up from down and where are they going to turn for the answers. Well, hopefully they'll turn to daddy Trump or daddy Biden or someone, or the CIA for their answers, or the New York Times for their answers. And much of it has been shut down, and the freedoms have been shut down, and nothing can quite grow the way it used to. There's very little real virality of thoughts, unless they're kind of vapid, meaningless thoughts like a cat, dancing or something. And so, I guess you can just sit home and be defeated. But I'd say that there is you have to have hope in the fact that we just keep adapting. We keep trying new things. If you want to go up against the largest, most powerful entities in the world, which is what corporate America is, it's what the oligarchy in America is. If you want to reveal the truth that they don't want revealed, you are going up against one of the most powerful entities that has ever existed. And you can't expect it to be easy. You can't expect them to just, hey, here's the yellow brick road, just walk right down it and present your ideas to every American. And so while I get furious when my old show Redacted Tonight is banned, and my YouTube channel's banned, and my TikTok channel's banned, and my Spotify show is banned, yeah, it's infuriating. But at the same time, you got to keep going. You got to look at this as a marathon. Look at this as a life quest to bring truth to people. And, I have just now, it's been 3 years since Redacted Tonight. I've just now created Unredacted Tonight. And hopefully that will keep growing. But I don't know. We're fighting one of the most powerful entities ever. So, you got to see a noble quest in the effort, rather than just thinking it's always going to, be handed. No, nothing is going to be handed to you. Nothing, and I don't mean you, I'm talking to everybody, but nothing is going to be easy. It's never going to be easy. And for those who you see who suddenly pop up and they seem to be saying kind of the same stuff, but they're getting millions of views, there's a reason they're getting millions of views. Either they align with corporate America, or they're a controlled opposition or something. If they're actually questioning the core issues of this society, of this socioeconomic system, they're not going to be the ones getting millions of views.
Exactly. And it is fascinating to see those who do rise up and shine the most out of the blue. But perhaps maybe that's a story for another day. Or is that, hey, let's face it, people are able to figure things out on their own as well. But for everyone that is tuning in, like, look, especially with this whole thing with Gavin Newsom having this podcast going after, or he's at copywriting and stuff. We are on the internet. Everything's open to be used. Everything's open to be criticized and given an analysis and a perspective. And, I've had people use my content. I've used other people's content, when there are interviews happening or something. And that's like, hey, and then all of a sudden you're seeing that get twisted around, and then YouTube's policy of shooting first, asking questions later. I mean, that's another tool of censorship. It's another tool of suppression. And I find it rather disheartening, because in this business, everything is open to be reviewed by the public. Nothing should just not be touched, period. I mean, I get it. Like, no one's going to say that, oh, this is my content. No, I'm giving an analysis and perspective. I'm giving an opinion, or you're transforming it. But it is still concerning that that's what happened to Keaton's channel, Do Dissidence. Now they're fine. But there's many layers to this environment that we're in, and I'm hoping that eventually things do get better. So I do appreciate you making time out of your day. Lee, what time does Unredacted Tonight come on? I know you mentioned it's on every Thursday. Let me just be clear on this. Every Thursday on YouTube and Rumble. What time so that my viewing audience can be there? Because hey, people still send me messages. Hey, I'm not being notified, or oh my God, you guys are still around, or I just got unsubscribed. And so I want people to know where they could find you. Where can they go?
Thanks, man. I really appreciate that. It premieres every Thursday, 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific. And there's 3 episodes already up. The fourth one will be this Thursday. So if people want to go right now, they could watch the first 3 episodes. We already had special guest Chris Hedges and others on there. But yeah, the easiest way to, rather than telling all the YouTube and Rumble channels, is just linktree.com/Lee Camp. Of course, it's also on Twitter and Instagram and all those things. But just linktree.com/Lee Camp will get you all of that. I also have 3 or 4 or something podcasts out there people can check out. That's at linktree.com/Lee Camp as well. LEECAMP. And yeah, I know a lot of people were furious that Redacted Tonight was just banned out of the blue, and so
I loved it. I thought it was a great show, man. I remember even seeing your comedy shows way back when you were visiting Chicago, man. I mean, that was I freaking hated that happened. And now I wait. Well, hold on. While we actually still have you on, I don't know if you recently heard that there was talk about returning RT America. I mean, is there any veracity or truth to that?
The only thing I've heard is I know Ben Swan, who continued. So RT America was banned 3 years ago, but Ben Swan, Rick Sanchez, and a few others kept working for RT International. I had nothing to do with that. And Unredacted Tonight is independent. It's just me trying to recreate it. But I know Ben Swan wrote in an open letter to Trump saying, let's bring back RT America and Sputnik, the radio channel. I seriously doubt. I've never seen Trump create much freedom for anything. But, I guess the one thing would be he does love undoing things that were done under Biden or Obama. One of the biggest examples probably was kiboshing the Trans-Pacific Partnership, which would have been the largest trade deal to ever exist. And of course, trade deal means corporate governance, giving away national sovereignty, et cetera. And Trump undid that, which was settled under Obama, basically because it was Obama and Hillary Clinton's thing, even though it was largely anti-China. That was the point of it. But so, every once in a while, Trump will do something just to piss off the Bidens of the world, and it's conceivable, but I still think highly unlikely.
All right. Well, here's hoping, but hope in one hand, crap in the other. See which one fills up faster. All right, folks. Lee, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Kit.
The key. I'm glad we had this great power panel of free speech. So don't worry, folks. We're not going anywhere just yet. And when the political police do come by to round us up, just remember us as we once were. So without further ado, folks, I want to thank my 2 guests for joining in. We're going to reset and have our main show. So everybody, stay tuned.
Awful place. Is that what you want me to say? You prove it's possible to sleep for days and to still think you're right here awake. The cost of living isn't much to make, but God, it's so hard to save. And when they told you everything was safe, were you safe? Were you safe? Were you safe? Were you safe? I guess this isn't such an awful place. Is that what you want me to say? You prove it's possible to sleep for days and to still think you're right here awake. The cost of living isn't much to make, but God, it's so hard to say. And when they told you everything was safe, were you safe? Were you safe? Were you safe? safe? Will you stay?
Fresh off the masses, the brand new cancerous growth, who has come here to vie for your vote. Come here to cry at the camps and to mourn at the shore for the bodies that float by the wreck of an immigrant boat. Then it's back to their luxury home, couple security booths and a moat. Couple cigars, little escargot, little booze and a soak. Just breathe in the steam and the smoke. Pink salt, lavender, candles are low. Shit, when you do what you do, gotta lighten the load. And he got a life of his own that's a sight to behold. And it's a lot to control, to decipher the code, or to siphon the soul. The cost of a good night's sleep for the working elite is a bargain, no matter the toll. Worth any wager, and that comes straight from the mouth of the means to the goal that will swallow us whole. Right for the picking if you don't mind mold, and you know I don't. Maybe we're pleasantly prone, maybe we're taking a licking, compliantly ticking and ticking and ticking, but never explode. No, I don't deliver the prettiest image, but damn if it isn't an accurate vision of natural fission, of rage at the system and abject heartbreak, patiently waiting for any who will listen. That little blue bird who was watching your words is a federal carrier pigeon, a Langley first. It's a patient observer who hears what it wants and is trained for the worst. Oh, you got nothing to hide. They'll be the ones to decide that after they root through your purse, after they read all your text, after they raid your apartment, confiscate all of its contents, then conjure up evidence out of the air on a wing and a prayer and malicious intelligence nonsense. Any presumption of innocence long since gone, right along with your comforts and constants. Historically first they will come from the communists. So why in the fuck would I say I'm a communist? Well, it might be I love my community more than the monsters of opulence who are holding us hostage, who are vomiting promises. Might be I'm all done seeing our pensions and benefits harvested. Might be I'm all done watching the populace being disarmed in the guise of an armistice. Watching a woman collapse on the floor who will rise no more. She is wheeled out the door and you're next in line for the pharmacist. If you can get me to vote, it's a hard no confidence. But part of the charm of deception is politics wearing the mask of incompetence. It's all in the art of austerity, darling. It's all in the slide of the providence. Until home is as wide as your cubicle height and is only as deep as your coffin is. Maybe I'm miles away from impatience, aching to break off the head of the snake where the capital lust, reptile brain, and the margin of profit is. Like off with his. Like off with his.
I guess this isn't such an awful place. Is that what you want me to say? You prove it's possible to sleep for days and to still think you're right here awake. The cost of living isn't much to make, but God, it's so hard to save. And when they told you everything was safe, were you safe?